All right, we'll take questions from the room and Zoom. Let's start in the room here. Please raise your hand if you would like a microphone. Start with John and then Max.
Hey, Dvon. How has Tom Allen kind of changed the defense? Obviously, you've seen a lot of defensive coordinators over the years. What's different about him compared to other defensive coordinators you've been under?
I think his variety and the understanding of the pieces that he has is kind of different from what we've seen in years past. I mean, you look at the game plan, we went from Abdul playing defensive end to linebacker, adjusting to that. And I think Coach Allen has done a tremendous job of utilizing his best players and putting them in the best positions, especially for the most part of this season. When you look at how we've been playing and people playing at different spots, the schemes that we're running, it's kind of hard for an offensive team to look at it and scheme for it just because we've given so many different diverse looks.
Hey, Dvon. Coach Franklin's talked a little bit about having to be able to play through some bumps and bruises at this point in the year, especially considering how many games you've played. And he also mentioned veterans being able to pull some younger guys along. Is that maybe more emphasized at this time of year, considering it is Game 16?
I mean, that's the name of the game for any program, I would assume, especially this late in the year. Of course, you want to stay out there every single snap, every single play. It's the biggest games of the year. But realistically speaking, you have to get some rotation and you have to get some rest. And I think the younger guys, we've been doing it all season, bringing the younger guys along, trying to develop them to the point where they can go into those big situations and perform. And I think they're doing a tremendous job of that. I mean, you've seen that with Ty, you've seen that with Xavier Gillum, Cook is coming along. I mean, I can go down the list and name you guys that have done that. I mean, you look at Zion this year. I mean, his role was relatively small compared to what he's doing now at the beginning of the season, but we continue to pull the younger guys along, especially him, and he's developed into one of our best players. And so I think we've been doing that all season, and I think especially now is very important, just given the gravity of the games and what we're putting into it and what it means.
Dvon, hope you're well. I believe that you and Kazai are playing season high, if not career high, snaps the last few weeks here in the postseason. You guys have tightened it up a little bit with a couple veterans no longer part of that equation for you right now at DT. How have you been able to handle that this deep into the season, taking on that kind of a load? And I guess speaking for Keziah on his part too, what has it meant to this defense that you've been able to do that?
I mean, again, I give a shout out to Coach Losi and our strength staff and what they've been doing, Coach T. And then to Deion and them as well. We go through this whole off season and they put so much load on us in terms of how many reps we're getting, the stress on our bodies in this off season to prepare for this longer season. I mean, in terms of how much we're playing now, we kind of expected that. Later in the season, it's gonna get critical. And you want your most experienced players out there, so we prepared like that throughout the whole off season. And then just in terms of practices and, Coach Deion doing what's best for us, we do a lot of technique things, but it's more so, okay, we're going to relax just a little bit on certain things, certain areas, certain team periods, just so we can have the vitality throughout the entire game. So,
Dvon, what are the challenges when you're facing a quarterback who can hurt you running the ball the way this quarterback can?
Honestly, it's just balancing the cage. I mean, you look at SMU, and it was a very similar situation just in terms of how he was able to run and create explosive plays on his feet. And I think we did a tremendous job. Coach Allen did a tremendous job. Our defensive staff did a tremendous job of coaching us and showing us the right way to balance the cage while also being aggressive in our pass rush. And I think it'll be no different this week, especially with, their offensive line and him being more of a mobile quarterback and them running a lot of QB sneaks, especially if you look back at that Georgia game, they did that a lot. So I think that'll be important for us this week, just balancing the cage and making sure we're very sound in our assignments and our gaps.
We're going to do a couple from Zoom here. Let's go to Rich Garcella.
Thanks, Greg. Hey, thanks, Dvon. you talked about Zane last week, but can you describe the level he's played at the last 5, 6 games, and why is he so effective against offensive linemen?
It's his pad level and his strength. Zane is, of course, a freak athlete, but also given his technique and his size and his strength, it's a mismatch for any offensive lineman. I mean, you look at this past week going up against 66, as well as that 62. It was a mismatch the entire time. Just his pad level, his speed off the ball. He's a freak athlete. He's one of those guys who is going to bench 455 for 5 and then go run a 4.40. He's a tremendous athlete, and I think it's showing up on film, especially when you get this late into the season. I mean, you talk about guys staying healthy and being able to still compete at a very high level throughout the entire season. I think he's doing that, and he's doing that well at a very high level. He's maintaining his strength, his speed, his agility, and it's showing in games. So,
Let's go to Audrey on Zoom.
Hey, Dvon, appreciate your time. I was wondering, obviously you guys spoke really highly of Manny when he was here. Then he leaves, Tom Allen comes in. What do you kind of remember about your early impressions of Tom? And in what ways maybe has he kind of surprised you, if at all?
I don't know. I feel like Coach Allen was very open. That was definitely my first impression. He definitely didn't leave much for surprise, I will say, just in terms of who he is as a coach and what he came here and set to do, what he wanted to do this season. So he didn't really leave much room for surprise. I mean, he told us who he was. He was an aggressive coach in terms of his play calling. He was going to put guys in the right position to succeed, and he was going to do everything in his power to win. I mean, you look at his track record everywhere he's went. I mean, he's won, outside of Indiana kind of, but, I respect Indiana and their program, but, he's done his due diligence, and I think he's doing that very well for us too, so.
Let's go to Max.
How much different is Max Granville right now than when he first joined during camp?
I think he's grown up a lot. I think he's becoming a very mature player. He's definitely changed in terms of his preparation and how he approaches the game. And I think he's going to grow into a tremendous player. I mean, if you look at him, physically, he's one of the more physically impressive players that we have. To be so young, but he's very physically imposing, and I think to his speed, his quickness, his agility, I think he's growing into it and learning how to use that at full speed at this high level. But it's incredible to see a young guy like that come in after Abdul, came out of the game and play, this robot position? Yeah, in Prowler, and perform at a high level in a playoff game. For him to do that and for him not to mess up, especially get any MAs or anything like that, that is incredible, and that's tremendous, and that's a testament to his dedication to his studies and how he's approached the game so far.
We'll go to John and then Seth Engel.
Dvon, how have you seen, you mentioned Abdul, how have you seen him grow off the field in your time since he got here?
Of course, you want your best players to be your best leaders, and I think Abdul has done that tremendously. He's grown a lot tremendously in that area. He wants to see the team succeed, and I think he's done a tremendous job of imparting his wisdom, whatever it may be, just in terms of pass rush, winning a rush, or just giving people different ways to win, different looks. I think he's done a tremendous job of feeding that information to the younger guys like Max Granville, especially. I think he's done a tremendous job of that this season, and he's growing a lot, and he's going to do a lot more growing.
Let's go to Seth Engel and then Tyler.
Hey, Dvon, you've obviously played with some great edge rushers in your time. Who does Max Granville maybe remind you of? And a follow-up, what's that age gap like? Him, supposed to be in high school right now, and you being a 6th year in college?
Man, the younger generation, at the risk of sounding super old, the younger generation is different nowadays, Max Granville is definitely a special kid. I feel like he has some similarities to Chop just in terms of his ability to get off the rock. He's learning how to bend from Abdul, so just his ability to bend, play through blocks. Now, once the game starts slowing down for him, much like Chop was, in his first season in the NFL, first couple weeks were a little slow, but now you see him picking up the pace, getting a sack or two a game now. I think Max Granville will be in a similar position just in terms of his college career. Is just getting comfortable at the end position. He's a kid, like you said. He's supposed to be in high school, but now he's playing in the college football playoffs right now. So I think his development is going to be incredible. I think the difference between year one and year two for him is going to be tremendous. And I think you should really look at the way Chop played, the way Disa played, and kind of look at their games and see that they're similar to what Max Granville has been doing or will do moving forward.
Let's go to Tyler and then Smeltzer.
Dvon, we had a conversation with James yesterday about Katron Allen and some of his running, and including that run that ultimately got called back. But just the way he's bringing it this postseason, from two perspectives for you. From a defensive player who's dealing with that on the other side of the ball, a guy running that way, how much does that kind of demoralize you over the course of a game? And from a defensive a player on Penn State's sideline who gets to watch him doing that to the opponent, how does it kind of maybe fire you guys up a little bit extra?
I mean, it's incredibly exciting, when you have somebody running that hard, running through people's face masks, and you see them just destroying the opponent. It's incredible, but I know it's incredibly demoralizing as well. When you see a guy like that who's running through multiple blocks, getting 20, 30 yards after contact, that can be incredibly demoralizing just in terms of what he's shown throughout the season, and then for him to take another step again during the playoffs, I know it's tough to watch for everybody that's not wearing a Penn State jersey. And as opposing defenses, like, you have to account for that. That has to be a big portion of your game prep. Otherwise, it's going to hurt you tremendously. So I think it's very tough for opposing defenses, and I think it's great for us.
Go to Joe Smeltzer and then Mark Brennan.
Hey, Dvon, appreciate the time.
How you doing? Thank you.
Doing well. Hope you're well, too. So, Notre Dame has the reputation of being one of the schools in that O-line U conversation. How does that unit compare to some of the better lines you've seen going against this year?
I mean, from the film that I've watched, I mean, they're a pretty good team. Of course, they're a pretty good offensive line. But at the same time, they're very young. I believe their left tackle or right tackle, he's a true freshman, a younger guy. And then the tackle on the left, he's a junior in Deni's class. But I think they have their strengths, of course, and I think they have their weaknesses. Their size is definitely a big component of how they play, with that physicality that they play with in terms of their double teams and coming off of that and creating gaps for their running back. But I think they also have their weaknesses. Of course, we'll explore those more later this week. But I think our D-line is the best in the country. So I think it'll be a game for them.
We got time for three more. Mark, Avery, and then Audrey.
Dvon, you've become a pretty visible presence at Penn State hoops games. How did you get those? How did you get those tickets? And seriously, how much fun are you having watching those guys kind of do what they do?
Everybody has fun when the family winning. We're all winning right now. Our girls volleyball team, they just won a national championship. Our boys team are undefeated at home. And I mean, we're doing well, thank God. But everybody's winning. Everybody's having a good time. Penn State athletics should be overjoyed right now with the way our sports teams are playing at such a high level. And I'm enjoying it. It's a nice little reprieve. We come back from our bowl game at AZ to a basketball game 2 nights later. That's what you want in a week. Win a bowl game and then go watch our team whoop up on some other basketball teams. So they're doing a tremendous job. Oh, and shout out to the basketball coaches over there. They've done a tremendous job of turning this program around after our previous coach left. They're doing an incredible job. So shout out to them.
Let's go to Avery and then Audrey.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So with you being in your 6th year, is there anything you've been learning, I guess, as a leader, with this being your longest season at all?
I mean, this is the first time anybody's ever experienced any of this, so it's a huge learning curve for everybody. And I think we spoke on a little bit earlier just about the longevity of the season and just in terms of keeping your body healthy. This is the longest season anybody's ever experienced. And I think it's important for us to look at the recovery portion of it all and, make sure everybody's on their P's and Q's because, the season could go a lot of different directions. And I mean, you lose 1 or 2 players just due to the longevity of the season and the season could potentially be over for you. So I think that's the biggest thing that I've learned this season. Especially when you look at the NFL and how many games that they have in any given season. It's a lot of games, so staying healthy is pivotal.
Last question, Audrey.
Hey, Dvon, you kind of mentioned a little bit earlier about how the younger generation is a little bit different. I'm curious. I mean, obviously, the sport you're playing right now is much different than when you got to college. Has James changed at all, or have you seen him change at all, Coach Franklin, kind of in that time frame? Is he maybe willing to let this be a little bit more player-led? Because obviously, I think it's a little bit different recruiting kids right now than it was, when you all were coming out of high school.
Oh, 100%. Coach Franklin has done a great job of adjusting to, this whole new NIL scape, especially with the way kids are now. A lot of their values and what they're looking for is just a little bit different. Now money is a huge component, but I don't believe that Coach Franklin has allowed that to change what he's looking for in student athletes. Coach Franklin has done a tremendous job in his consistency in what he's recruiting, but he is changing with the times, and he understands that that's necessary in order for teams to win. I mean, you look at teams around the country, and you look at those coaches and those programs who have allowed players to dictate, their value to the program, which kind of interferes with the relationships between older players and younger players and how NIL works. But I believe Coach Franklin has done a tremendous job of kind of keeping everybody on that same path and with a one-track mind, and adjusting well to this new landscape. So I think Coach Franklin is changing with the times, but I think he's also staying the same in terms of his consistency and who he is and who he has been as a coach, especially during my time here.
Thanks, Dvon.
Yeah.